let's say that you have the problem 1/3 t plus 4 is equal to 10. So to kind of help make sense of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a bar diagram, and we're going to kind of walk step by step and really understanding what the problem's asking. So what we're going to do is we're going to first represent our number t. So while looking at this, we need to just understand that that's just a value that we need to find, and when we're multiplying, so 1/3 t means 1/3 times t, but I like to think, or have my students think, that it's 1/3 of t. And so what we're going to do is this is going to represent our whole number t. So now looking at this, this is going to tell us that we only have 1/3 of it, so we need to go ahead and split our t into 3 equal parts. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on this 1/3. So now continuing on to the problem tells us that once we add 4 to this third, that we know that it's going to equal 10. So I'm going to go ahead and add on 4 to the end. I'm going to use the blue just so that we can see the difference between the 4 and then the 1/3. So now we know that when we add 4 to the third, that this whole section here is equal to 10. And so now we can ask ourselves, well, if I know that I added 4, well, what number can I add 4 to and get 10? And so we can see that we can subtract this 4 and we'd be left with 6. And so now we see that 1/3 of this number is 6, and so now if we continue to fill in the other 2/3, we'll see that now our number t is actually equal to 18. So let's go ahead and now look to see how that compares with the traditional way of solving these problems, and kind of see that it's the same process, but with the bar diagram, it just gives us a visual and we can actually solve it without having to memorize the process. So what we have is we have 1/3 of t plus 4 is equal to 10. So the same thing with the bar diagram, we took away 4. Well, now what we're going to do is we're going to take away 4 from each side. And so what we were left with is 1/3 of our number equaled 6. And so just like with the bar diagram, then we continue to fill in the other 2/3 so that we could see that 3/3 was 18. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. 3 times 3. Well, there's another word too for reciprocal, and it's called multiplicative inverse, which is just a fancy way of saying reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by the multiplicative inverse, and we'll see that when we multiply numbers with its multiplicative inverse, that it actually equals 1. So we're left with t is equal to 18. Now before I move on to the next problem, which is going to be u divided by 4, we're going to take away 13 from it and we'll be left with 9. I first want to kind of make the connection looking at this u divided by 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and represent our number u. So this just represents our number. We don't know how much it is, but we can still now kind of see that it's a number, not just what a lot of people think is a letter. And this divide means that we're going to divide it into 4 equal parts. So there's our 4 equal parts. And then the part that we're going to be looking at is this little piece right there, which we can also say is 1/4 of u, which is the same exact type of problem as we had on this right here with this 1/3 of t. Now we can also begin to look at it as that 1/3 of t is the same as t divided by 3. And so this is how a lot of times when we approach these type of problems, u divided by 4, I always ask my students, we can also look at it as, well, we only have 1/4 of u. And so kind of going off of that, I'm going to kind of build off of that, and now we're going to go ahead and continue the problem. So I'll just go ahead and erase this box right here. We had u, and we took away 13. So looking at this 1/4 now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this 1/4, and we know that when we take 13 away from it, so we're going to take a certain amount away, and this little section here is just going to represent us taking away 13. Well, the amount that's left is going to be 9. And so now looking at it, that we can see that, well, if I took 13 away from a number and I was left with 9, then in order to find out what the whole fourth actually was before we took anything away, we'll see that it was 22 by adding 9 and 13. So if I know that this fourth is 22, I know this fourth is 22, this fourth is 22, and this fourth is 22. And so now we can see that now we would end up having that u is made up of 4 groups of 22, and we would have 88 for our answer. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at how that compares to doing it the traditional way, just isolating the variable, and kind of compare the steps in the process that we took. So here's our problem. All right, the first thing we did was that we added 13 and 9 together right here so that we could get our 22, or our fourth. And so now if I add 13 and 13 to both sides, here we make additive inverse, so negative 13 plus 13 is always 0. So now we will just be left with a fourth of u is equal to 22. So if I know that 1/4 is 22, well, we can now multiply both sides by the multiplicative inverse, 4, which you could also do 4 over 1, which is equal to just u. And what I do to one side, you have to do to the other. And so we see that u is equal to 88.